Security won't fix this. You will, with your tongue, she hissed, pointing to the small orange stain on the spotless carpet. Two identical 5-year-old girls stared at her, tears streaming down their faces. One of them, trembling, began to kneel on the soft floor. In the corner of the lounge, the girl's billionaire father folded his newspaper. His disguise forgotten, a cold fury took over his face. What the cruel supervisor didn't know was that her boss's boss was about to act, and that her display of power would unravel a family secret, cost her the job, and reunite a father with the 2 daughters he never knew existed. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. Do you know what we do with little girls who make messes in our premium lounge? Susan Blackwell's voice cut through the quiet hum of JFK Airport's Diamond Sky Lounge. 5-year-old Zara Wilson froze, orange juice dripping from the overturned cup onto her small fingers. Tears filled her wide brown eyes as she stared at the spreading puddle on the pristine white marble floor. "I'm sorry," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. Susan leaned closer, her lips twisted into a cruel smile. "Sorry doesn't clean up spilled juice, does it?" From across the lounge, Michael Reynolds watched the scene unfold. He'd been observing the twin girls discreetly for the past 20 minutes from behind his baseball cap and plain clothes, an unusual disguise for a man whose face regularly appeared on the covers of business magazines. "It was an accident," said Zoe, shifting to stand protectively in front of her sister. Though identical in their matching blue dresses and white hair ribbons, Zoe carried herself with a confidence her twin lacked. Michael's attention returned to his phone, where a DNA report from 3 months ago still seemed impossible. 99.7% probability of paternity. The private investigator's report below it connected the genetic results to these very children, Zoe and Zara Wilson, 5 years old, currently living with their grandmother Eleanor Wilson in Brooklyn. "This area isn't for everyone," Susan said loudly, her gaze sweeping over the girls' simple but neat clothing. "Clearly some people don't belong in our Diamond Sky Lounge." The other passengers shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs but remained silent. A flight attendant named Carol Bennett stepped forward with napkins but retreated when Susan shot her a warning glare. "Clean it up," Susan demanded, pointing at the spill. "We don't know how," Zoe said, her small hand reaching for her sister's. "Then you'll learn." Susan's voice hardened. "Starting now." Michael studied the twins' faces more closely. The distinctive arch of their eyebrows matched his own. That dimple in Zoe's left cheek when she frowned. He saw it every morning in his mirror. Could these really be his daughters from that brief relationship with Jasmine Wilson 6 years ago before his company exploded in value? Before he became too busy to maintain connections? "I'll help them," offered a gray-haired man seated nearby. "Sir, this is airline business," Susan said dismissively. "Security can handle this if necessary." Michael's fingers tightened around his phone as he watched Zara begin to cry silently. The tears ran down her cheeks in parallel tracks, but she made no sound, as though she'd learned that showing emotion only made things worse. "Security won't fix this," Susan continued, her voice dropping to a hiss as she leaned closer to the children. "You will, with your tongue, if necessary." A shocked silence fell over the lounge. The cruelty was so unexpected, so disproportionate to the offense, that even the most disinterested travelers looked up in disbelief. Michael stood, removing his cap and sunglasses. Something fierce and protective rose in him, a feeling so powerful and unfamiliar it almost took his breath away. These might be his daughters. Even if they weren't, they were children being bullied by an adult who should know better. "I spilled my drink too when I first flew in first class," he said, moving toward them with deliberate steps. "I was 22, not 5. Susan barely glanced at him. "Sir, please, this doesn't concern you." "I think it does." Michael knelt beside the twins, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket to blot the spilled juice. He smiled gently at Zara. Accidents happen to everyone. We need to maintain standards in our premium spaces, Susan insisted. These children are flying first class, Michael finished for her. I arranged their tickets myself. Susan frowned, finally taking a proper look at the man intervening in her discipline. Her eyes widened slightly as recognition dawned. Mr. Reynolds, you didn't recognize me. Few people do when I'm dressed like this. Michael continued calmly cleaning the spill. That's rather the point when I travel. Whispers rippled through the lounge. Michael Reynolds, founder of Reynolds Technologies, worth $23 billion according to last month's Forbes. I'll get someone to clean this immediately. Susan's tone transformed completely. Michael turned to the twins who were watching him with wide, identical eyes. I'm Michael. What are your names? I'm Zoe Wilson, said the more confident twin. This is my sister Zara. We're 5 years old. We're flying to visit our aunt in San Francisco, Zara added softly, studying his face with curious intensity. All by yourselves? That's very brave, Michael said, feeling a strange tightness in his chest. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. He had the same eyes, those exact same eyes, staring back at him. Our grandmother arranged it, Zoe explained proudly. She said we're big enough now for an adventure. A cleaning staff member hurried over with supplies. Susan hovered nearby, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and fear. Girls, maybe you'd like to sit with me until your flight. Michael offered, surprised by how much he wanted them to say yes. Zoe narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Grandma says we shouldn't talk to strangers. Your grandmother is absolutely right, Michael agreed. But I'm not exactly a stranger. He paused, uncertain how to explain. I knew your mother a long time ago. You knew Mommy? Zara's voice brightened with interest. Susan interrupted, clearly trying to salvage the situation. Mr. Reynolds, please let me offer the girls complimentary refreshments. A misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Michael said, his voice quiet but firm. You threatened a 5-year-old child over spilled juice. He took out his phone and pressed record. Would you like to repeat what you said about cleaning with her tongue? Susan paled. I was only... You know what? Michael stopped the recording. I think I'd rather discuss this with your CEO. Jim Brennan and I have known each other for years. Reynolds Technologies handles all your booking software after all. The twins watched this exchange with fascination as Michael pulled out his phone again and dialed a number. Jim? It's Mike Reynolds. I'm at your JFK Diamond Sky Lounge where one of your supervisors is making my daughters lick the floor. The word daughters seemed to echo in the silent lounge. Susan's face drained of color. The twins looked at Michael with confused expressions. Yes, my daughters, Michael repeated into the phone, his eyes never leaving the girls' faces. I'll explain later, but right now, I need you to tell me how you plan to handle this situation. As airline executives began rushing toward the lounge, Michael realized that defending these girls from one moment of cruelty had been the easy part. The hard part, explaining who he really was, why he'd been absent for 5 years and what happened between him and their mother, was just beginning. But looking at their faces, he knew with absolute certainty that the DNA test hadn't lied. These were his daughters. And from this moment forward, nothing would ever be the same. Jim Brennan's voice crackled over the phone speaker. Mike, what's happening? Did you say your daughters? The Diamond Sky Lounge had fallen completely silent. Every passenger was watching the scene unfold between Michael, the airline supervisor, and the twin girls. Susan Blackwell stood frozen, her face pale as she realized who she was dealing with. I'll explain everything later, Jim, Michael said firmly into the phone. Right now, I need someone from your executive team in this lounge immediately. They're already on their way, Jim replied. I'm sending Patricia Morgan from Customer Experience right now. Michael ended the call and turned to Susan. "I'd like you to repeat what you said to these children. For the record." He held up his phone, the recording app clearly visible. Susan's demeanor changed instantly. Her previous confidence vanished as she struggled to find words. "Mr. Reynolds, there's been a misunderstanding. I was simply trying to maintain our standards. Standards that include making 5-year-old children lick spilled juice off the floor?" Michael's voice remained calm, but his eyes were hard. "I never intended," Susan began. "I heard what you said," interrupted the gray-haired man who had tried to help earlier. He stood up and approached them. "We all did." Michael nodded appreciatively at the older man. "Thank you, sir." "James Parker," the man introduced himself. "Retired elementary school teacher. 40 years working with children, and I've never heard anyone speak to a child like that." Susan glanced around nervously. Other passengers were nodding in agreement with James. The flight attendant named Carol Bennett had returned with a stack of napkins and was quietly cleaning the spilled juice. "Let me help," Carol whispered to the twins. "This isn't your fault." Michael crouched down to eye level with Zoe and Zara. "Are you two okay?" Zoe maintained her protective stance in front of her sister, but Zara peered around her, studying Michael's face with curious eyes. "You really knew our mommy?" Zara asked softly. "I did," Michael answered, his throat tightening. "A long time ago." Zara reached out hesitantly and touched Michael's cheek with her small hand. "Your eyes look like mine." The simple observation hit Michael like a physical blow. He swallowed hard as unexpected emotion welled up inside him. This small gesture of connection, his daughter touching his face for the first time, made everything suddenly real in a way the DNA test never had. "Yes," he managed to say. "I noticed that too." Susan backed away, pulling out her own phone. "I need to call my supervisor," she muttered, retreating toward the back office. "You said we're your daughters," Zoe stated bluntly, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "But our mommy never told us about you." Michael took a deep breath. How could he explain this complicated situation to 5-year-olds? Sometimes grown-ups lose touch with each other. "Your mother and I knew each other before you were born, but we didn't stay in contact." "Why not?" Zoe demanded. Before Michael could answer, the lounge doors swung open. 3 airline executives in crisp uniforms hurried in, looking anxious. The woman in front spotted Michael immediately and rushed over. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm Patricia Morgan, VP of Customer Experience. I cannot express how deeply sorry we are about this incident." "Patricia," Michael acknowledged, standing up. "I'd like to speak with you shortly, but first, I need a moment with Zoe and Zara." Patricia nodded quickly. "Of course. We'll wait right over there." She and her colleagues retreated to a respectful distance while Carol continued quietly cleaning up the spill. Michael turned back to the twins, who were watching everything with wide eyes. "Your flight to San Francisco might be delayed a bit. Would that be okay?" "Are we in trouble?" Zara whispered. "Absolutely not," Michael assured her firmly. "You did nothing wrong. Sometimes adults behave badly, and that's what happened here." James Parker approached with 2 fresh cups of juice, lids firmly attached. "Thought you might still be thirsty," he said kindly, offering them to the twins. "Thank you, sir," Zoe replied politely, accepting the drinks and handing one to her sister. "I need to make a phone call to your grandmother," Michael said. "Would it be all right if I did that?" Zoe considered this seriously. "Grandma Eleanor told us not to talk to strangers." "That's smart advice," Michael agreed. "But I promise I only want to explain what happened here and introduce myself properly." After a moment's consideration, Zoe nodded. "Okay, but we'll be listening." Michael smiled at her protective instinct. "I wouldn't expect anything less." He pulled out his phone again and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number his private investigator had provided. His heart pounded as he pressed call. How would Eleanor Wilson react to this unexpected development? As the phone rang, Michael guided the twins to a quiet seating area away from the other passengers. Carol Bennett had finished cleaning and approached with small cookies on a napkin. "A peace offering," she said softly. "I'm so sorry about what happened." "You tried to help," Michael acknowledged. "Thank you." The twins accepted the cookies with shy smiles as Michael's call connected. "Hello?" A woman's voice answered, sounding cautious about the unknown number. Michael took a deep breath. "Mrs. Eleanor Wilson? My name is Michael Reynolds. I'm calling about your granddaughters, Zoe and Zara." There was a pause. "What about them? Has something happened? They should be on their flight to San Francisco by now." "They're safe," Michael assured her quickly. "There's been an incident at the airport lounge, but they're perfectly fine. I'm with them now." "What kind of incident?" Eleanor's voice sharpened with concern. "Who did you say you are?" "My name is Michael Reynolds," he repeated. "Mrs. Wilson, this is going to sound strange, but I have reason to believe I'm Zoe and Zara's father." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. The twins watched Michael intently as they nibbled their cookies. "That's impossible," Eleanor finally said. "My daughter never told anyone who their father was." "I dated Jasmine briefly about 6 years ago," Michael explained, keeping his voice low so only the twins could hear. "I recently took a DNA ancestry test that showed a high probability of children I didn't know about. My investigation led me to Zoe and Zara." Another long pause followed. When Eleanor spoke again, her voice was guarded. "What exactly do you want, Mr. Reynolds?" "Right now, just to help. There was an unfortunate situation with an airline employee that I intervened in. The girls' flight will likely be delayed, and I wanted to let you know." "Let me speak to my granddaughters," Eleanor demanded. Michael handed the phone to Zoe. "Grandma wants to talk to you." Zoe took the phone. "Hi, Grandma, we're okay." She paused, listening. "A lady was mean because Zara spilled juice, but Mr. Michael helped us." Another pause. "Yes, he says he knew Mommy." Zoe listened again, then handed the phone back to Michael. "Mr. Reynolds," Eleanor's voice was firm, "I appreciate your help today, but I need to understand your intentions. My daughter is gone and these girls are my life." "I understand," Michael said quietly. "I'm not trying to disrupt their lives. I only found out about this possibility 3 months ago. Today was simply meant to be an observation before deciding how to approach you." He watched the twins as they whispered to each other, Zara occasionally glancing up at him with those eyes so like his own. "We need to meet in person," Eleanor stated. "These are not matters to discuss over the phone with the children present." "I agree completely," Michael said. "Would today be possible? I can arrange transportation back to Brooklyn for them instead of continuing to San Francisco." As Michael waited for Eleanor's response, airline executives hovered anxiously nearby. Susan Blackwell was nowhere to be seen. The Diamond Sky Lounge had become the stage for a life-changing moment none of them had anticipated when the day began. For Michael Reynolds, tech billionaire and now, possibly father, the world had shifted on its axis. The DNA test results were no longer just scientific data. They were these two small humans with his eyes and his dimpled smile, waiting to discover who he was and why he had suddenly appeared in their lives. "I'll send my car and driver for you," Eleanor said after a moment of consideration. "These girls are everything to me, Mr. Reynolds." "I understand completely," Michael replied, watching Zoe and Zara as they finished their cookies. "Would 6 o'clock this evening work for you? That gives me time to handle the situation here and bring them safely back to Brooklyn." 6 o'clock, Eleanor agreed, her voice still cautious. "Text me the driver's information when they're on their way. The girls know not to get into cars with strangers." "Smart rule," Michael said. "I'll see you this evening, Mrs. Wilson." As Michael ended the call, Patricia Morgan approached again, her face a mask of professional concern. "Mr. Reynolds, we have a private meeting room ready if you'd prefer to discuss the incident away from the main lounge," she said. Michael nodded. "That would be helpful, thank you." He turned to the twins. Would you like to come with me to talk about what happened? There's nothing to be afraid of. Zara looked uncertain, but Zoe straightened her shoulders. We'll come. I want to make sure that mean lady gets in trouble. In the private meeting room, the airline executives had assembled a crisis response team. Patricia sat at the head of the table with two men in suits flanking her. A woman with a laptop sat poised to take notes. Girls, would you like to sit here and draw while I talk to these people? Michael pulled out two chairs at the far end of the table and found some paper and pens in his briefcase. Okay, Zara said softly. She immediately began drawing, her small fingers working carefully on the paper. I'm going to listen, Zoe declared, though she took a pen too. Patricia cleared her throat. Mr. Reynolds, first, please accept our deepest apologies for the inexcusable behavior you witnessed today. Susan Blackwell has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending a full investigation. Where is she now? Michael asked. Security escorted her from the premises, one of the male executives replied. I'm Thomas Reed, head of security. We take incidents like this extremely seriously. Michael nodded. Good. But this isn't just about one employee with a bad attitude. This is about a culture that allowed her to feel comfortable threatening children in the first place. Patricia winced. You're absolutely right. We're already drafting a company-wide communication and planning additional training. I don't want corporate responses, Michael interrupted. I want real change. He glanced back at the twins, lowering his voice slightly. Those girls were humiliated for being children, for having an accident. Think about what that teaches them about their value in the world. From the end of the table, Zara's small voice suddenly spoke up. I drew the mean lady. She held up her paper, which showed a stick figure with an angry face and sharp teeth. The executives looked uncomfortable as Michael walked over to examine the drawing. That's very good, Zara. You captured how she made you feel. She was scary, Zara whispered. Michael crouched down beside her chair. You don't need to be scared anymore. These people are going to make sure she doesn't treat any other children that way. Promise? Zara asked. Michael looked directly at Patricia. They promise. Don't you? Absolutely, Patricia said firmly. In fact, we'd like to offer both girls unlimited first-class travel for a year as a small token of our apology. Their flight to San Francisco? Michael asked. We can rebook it for tomorrow, or whenever is most convenient, Patricia offered. That won't be necessary right now, Michael said. They'll be returning to Brooklyn today. Their grandmother and I need to discuss some important matters. Zoe looked up from her drawing. What matters? Michael took a deep breath. This was the moment to begin explaining. He sat down between the twins, aware of the executives watching curiously. Do you know what DNA is? He asked gently. Both girls shook their heads. It's like invisible instructions inside you that make you who you are, Michael explained. The color of your eyes, your smile, the way your hair curls, all that comes from DNA. Half comes from your mom and half from your dad. From Mommy, Zara said, touching her own cheek. Yes, from your mom, Michael agreed. Scientists can do special tests that show when people are related. I did one of those tests a few months ago, and it showed something surprising. It showed that I might be your father. Zoe frowned suspiciously. If you're our dad, why weren't you with us and Mommy? That's a very fair question, Michael said honestly. I didn't know about you. Your mom and I knew each other briefly a long time ago before my company became successful. We lost contact and she never told me she was having babies. Why not? Zoe demanded. Michael sighed. I don't know. That's one of the things I hope to talk about with your grandmother. Zara studied his face intently. So you're like, our daddy? The simple question made Michael's chest tighten. I think so, yes. The test says I am, but that's why I need to talk with your grandmother, to understand everything better. The airline executives exchanged glances, clearly realizing they were witnessing a deeply personal moment. Patricia quietly stood up. "Mr. Reynolds, we'll give you some privacy. When you're ready to leave, we'll have a private vehicle waiting to take you wherever you need to go." "Thank you," Michael said, barely looking up as they filed out of the room. When they were alone, Michael turned back to the twins. "I know this is a lot to understand. Do you have questions for me?" "Where do you live?" Zoe asked immediately. "I have a big apartment in Manhattan, not too far from Brooklyn where you live." "Do you have other kids?" she continued. "No," Michael said. "Just you two, if the test is right." Zara had been quiet, but suddenly she asked, "Did you love our mommy?" The innocent question caught Michael off guard. "We didn't know each other for very long," he said carefully, "but she was very special, very smart and kind." "She had cancer," Zoe stated matter-of-factly. "She went to heaven 2 years ago." Michael nodded solemnly. "I'm very sorry about that. I didn't know she was sick." "Grandma takes care of us now," Zara added. "She makes good cookies." "I'm looking forward to meeting her," Michael said. A gentle knock at the door interrupted them. Carol Bennett, the flight attendant who had tried to help earlier, peered in. "Excuse me, Mr. Reynolds. The car you requested is waiting at the private terminal entrance. I've been asked to escort you there." "Thank you, Carol," Michael said, standing up. "Girls, are you ready to go meet your grandmother? Will we come back to fly to Aunt Linda's another day?" Zoe asked. "If that's what you and your grandmother decide," Michael assured her. As they gathered their belongings, Michael sent a text message to Eleanor with the driver's information and estimated arrival time. He helped the girls put on their small backpacks and took each by the hand as they followed Carol through the airport. News of the incident had clearly spread. Staff members watched them pass with curious expressions. When they reached the private terminal entrance, a black SUV waited with a driver standing beside it. "Hello, Mr. Reynolds," the driver said. "I'm David. I'll be taking you to Brooklyn today." "Thank you, David," Michael replied. "This is Zoe and Zara. We'll be going to their grandmother's address in Brooklyn." As David helped the twins into the car's booster seats, Carol Bennett approached Michael. "Mr. Reynolds," she said quietly, "I wanted to apologize again for not doing more when Ms. Blackwell was being cruel to the girls. I was afraid for my job, but that's no excuse." "You tried to help when others didn't," Michael said. "That matters." "They've already called me in for a witness statement," Carol explained. "I'm going to tell the truth about everything I saw." "I appreciate that," Michael said. "What happens next isn't about punishment. It's about making sure no child gets treated that way in the future." Carol nodded gratefully and stepped back as Michael entered the SUV. The twins were already settling in, examining the car's interior with curious eyes. "Is this your car?" Zara asked, running her hand over the leather seat. "One of them," Michael said, buckling his seatbelt. "Are you rich?" Zoe asked bluntly. Michael smiled slightly. "Yes, I built a technology company that became very successful. Grandma says we can't always buy the pretty cereals because they cost too much money," Zara observed. The innocent comment revealed more about Eleanor's financial situation than perhaps the girl realized. Michael made a mental note as David pulled away from the curb. As the SUV merged into New York traffic, Michael watched the twins' profiles against the window. They were a perfect blend of his features and Jasmine's, a woman he had dated briefly but never truly known. Now he would meet the mother who had raised Jasmine, who was raising her grandchildren after her daughter's death. The journey to Brooklyn would take at least 45 minutes in this traffic. Michael had that long to prepare himself for a meeting that would determine not just his future, but the future of these two small girls who might never have known him if not for a spilled cup of juice and an airline employee's cruelty. The twins fell into whispered conversation, occasionally glancing at him with curious eyes. Zara had already begun drawing again in her small notebook. Zoe remained watchful, protective, processing everything with a seriousness beyond her years. As the Manhattan skyline receded behind them, Michael Reynolds, tech billionaire, business genius, and now, possibly father, faced the most important negotiation of his life. The black SUV turned onto a tree-lined street in Brooklyn. old brick apartment buildings stood side by side with narrow stoops leading to front doors. David slowed the car as they approached their destination. "Is this where you live?" Michael asked the twins. "Yes," Zara pointed excitedly. "Look, Grandma is waiting." On the front steps of a 4-story brick building stood an older woman. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled into a neat bun, and she wore a simple blue dress with a cardigan despite the warm day. She stood perfectly straight, watching the vehicle with obvious tension in her posture. "That's Grandma Eleanor," Zoe explained unnecessarily. As David parked the car, Michael took a deep breath. "Girls, would you like to go say hello to your grandmother first?" The twins nodded eagerly. Once David opened the door, they scrambled out and ran to Eleanor, who crouched down to embrace them both. Michael stepped out of the SUV more slowly, giving them a moment together. Eleanor looked up, her eyes meeting his over the girls' heads. Her expression was guarded, assessing. Michael approached with measured steps. "Mrs. Wilson," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Eleanor stood, keeping one arm around each girl. "Mr. Reynolds, you've caused quite a disruption to our day." "I apologize for that," Michael said sincerely. "It wasn't my intention." Eleanor studied his face before responding. "Let's continue this conversation inside. The neighbors don't need to witness our business." She led them up the steps and through the front door into a small lobby with mailboxes lining one wall. They climbed 2 flights of stairs to apartment 3B. Eleanor unlocked the door and ushered them inside. The apartment was modest but meticulously clean. A small living room connected to an equally small kitchen. Bookshelves lined the walls, and houseplants occupied every windowsill. What immediately caught Michael's attention were the photographs. Dozens of them in frames of various sizes, displayed on every available surface. One in particular made him stop. A young woman with a twin's smile, her arms wrapped around her very pregnant belly. "That's my mommy," Zara said, following his gaze, "before we were born." "Jasmine?" Michael said softly. "Yes," Eleanor confirmed, watching his reaction closely. "My daughter." Michael moved closer to examine the photo. "I remember her," he said, "but we only dated for a few months. I never knew she was pregnant." "Girls," Eleanor said, "please go to your room for a little while. Mr. Reynolds and I need to talk." "But Grandma," Zoe began to protest. "No arguments, Zoe. You can take your new drawings to show your stuffed animals." The twins reluctantly disappeared through a door off the living room, though Zoe gave Michael one last suspicious look before closing the door. "Please sit." Eleanor gestured to a worn but clean sofa. Michael sat while Eleanor remained standing, arms folded across her chest. "Before we begin," she said, "I want to understand exactly what you want from us. If it's confirmation that you're their father, a DNA test can establish that. If it's some kind of custody arrangement, I should warn you I'll fight with everything I have." "Mrs. Wilson," "Eleanor," she corrected. "If we're discussing my granddaughter's future, we should be on a first-name basis." "Eleanor," Michael nodded, "I'm not here to take the girls away from you. I only discovered the possibility they existed 3 months ago through a DNA ancestry service I used. The results showed a high probability of children I didn't know about. And you hired someone to find them," Eleanor stated flatly. "Yes," Michael admitted. "I hired a private investigator. I wanted to be certain before approaching anyone." Eleanor finally sat in an armchair across from him. "Jasmine never told me who the father was. She came home from New York City one day and announced she was pregnant. When I asked about the father, she said it didn't matter. He was busy building his future, and she would build hers." Michael winced. "I wish she had told me." "Would it have mattered?" Eleanor asked bluntly. 6 years ago, you were just starting your company. Jasmine said you were completely focused on your work. Would you really have wanted the responsibility?" "I don't know," Michael answered honestly. but I should have had the chance to make that choice." Eleanor's expression softened slightly. "Perhaps. But Jasmine made her choice. She was always independent, even as a child." Michael glanced around the apartment, noticing details he'd missed at first. The furniture was old, but well-maintained. A stack of bills sat on a small desk in the corner, held down by a heavy paperweight. A calendar on the wall was filled with notations about school events and doctor appointments. "When did Jasmine get sick?" he asked quietly. Eleanor's face clouded with grief. 3 years ago. Breast cancer. She fought hard for a year, but—" She paused, collecting herself. "The twins were only 3 when she died. They still ask for her sometimes." "I'm so sorry," Michael said. "I had no idea."
"How could you?"
Eleanor shrugged. "She never told you about them, and she certainly never told me about you." A small sound from the twins' bedroom suggested little ears were pressed against the door. Eleanor smiled slightly and raised her voice. "And certain young ladies should not be eavesdropping on adult conversations." The sound of giggling and scampering feet followed. "They're good girls," Eleanor said, her voice warm with love. "Smart, too. Zoe is fearless, always the first to try anything new. Zara is more thoughtful, always watching and drawing what she sees." "I noticed," Michael said. "They're incredible children. You've done an amazing job with them." "I've done my best," Eleanor said. "It hasn't always been easy." She hesitated, then continued reluctantly. Jasmine didn't leave much. Her medical bills took most of her savings. My nurse's pension covers our basic needs, but there's not much left for extras. Michael leaned forward. "I want to help, Eleanor. Not just with money, but with anything the girls need. They're my daughters. I've missed 5 years of their lives already." "You can't just walk in here with your billions and take over," Eleanor said firmly. "The girls have a routine, a stable life. They've had enough disruption." "I'm not trying to disrupt anything," Michael assured her. "I just want to be part of their lives, to contribute to their well-being and future." Eleanor stood and walked to the desk, picking up an envelope from the stack of bills. She seemed to wrestle with herself before handing it to Michael. "This arrived yesterday," she said quietly. Michael opened it to find a final notice for a past-due medical bill for $2,500. "Zara's hospital visit? Pneumonia 2 months ago," Eleanor explained. "My insurance covered most of it, but the deductible—" She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable discussing financial matters. "Let me take care of this," Michael said immediately. "Please. As their father, it's my responsibility too." "I've managed on my own for 5 years," Eleanor said, pride evident in her voice. "I know you have," Michael said gently, "and that's remarkable. But you don't have to do it alone anymore." A small crash from the bedroom interrupted them. The door flew open and Zara appeared looking upset. "Zoe broke my blue crayon," she announced indignantly. "I did not." Zoe appeared behind her. "It was already cracked." Eleanor sighed. "Girls, Mr. Reynolds and I are talking." "It's okay," Michael said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. "I think I might have something that could help." He removed a business card and wrote on the back of it, "This is my phone number. If you ever need anything, even a new blue crayon, you can call me. Anytime." Zara took the card carefully, examining both sides. "Your card is shiny." "And it has a robot on it," Zoe observed, looking over her sister's shoulder. "That's the logo for my company," Michael explained. "We make computers that help people do things faster and easier." "Do you have a robot at your house?" Zara asked, wide-eyed. Michael smiled. "No, not a real robot. Just computers." Eleanor watched this interaction with complex emotions playing across her face. When the girls returned to their room with the precious business card, she turned back to Michael. "They need stability," she said quietly. "I need to know your intentions before I allow you further into their lives." Michael nodded. "I understand. I want to establish a relationship with them gradually, at whatever pace works for all of you. I'd like to provide financial support immediately for their education, medical needs, anything else they require. And I'd like regular time with them to get to know them. And when you lose interest? When your busy life takes priority? Eleanor challenged. That won't happen, Michael said firmly. They're my daughters. Now that I know they exist, they're my priority. Eleanor studied him for a long moment. We'll see, she finally said. Actions speak louder than promises, Mr. Reynolds. Please call me Michael, he said. And I agree completely. Judge me by what I do, not what I say. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting golden light through the windows. In the small Brooklyn apartment, two people from very different worlds were cautiously laying the foundation for a new kind of family, connected by two 5-year-old girls drawing pictures in the next room. The morning sun streamed through Michael's penthouse windows as he sat at his desk, phone pressed to his ear. Sarah, cancel all my meetings today, he said to his personal assistant. Yes, including the product launch briefing. But Michael, the board has been waiting for this presentation for months, Sarah protested. The new neural interface is your project. Family emergency, Michael said simply. The team can handle it without me. After ending the call, Michael looked at his watch. 7:30 in the morning. He had been awake since 5, unable to sleep as he thought about Eleanor and the twins. He had left their apartment last night with a promise to return today. Now he needed to make good on that promise. An hour later, Michael stood outside a small bakery in Brooklyn, carefully selecting pastries. Next, he visited a grocery store, filling a cart with essentials he had noticed were running low in Eleanor's kitchen. As he paid, he spotted a display of children's science kits near the register. He added 2 to his purchase. At 9:15, Michael knocked on apartment 3B, arms loaded with bags. Eleanor opened the door, already dressed for the day in a simple blouse and slacks. Her eyebrows rose at the sight of his packages. Good morning, Michael said. I brought breakfast. And a few other things. Eleanor hesitated before stepping aside. The girls are still in their pajamas. We weren't expecting you so early. I'm sorry. I should have called first, Michael apologized, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. From the bedroom doorway, 2 small heads peeked out. When they spotted Michael, Zara waved shyly while Zoe marched out in pink pajamas decorated with stars. You came back, Zoe stated, studying the grocery bags with interest. I said I would, Michael replied. He began unpacking fresh fruit, bread, and other staples. Eleanor watched him with a mixture of gratitude and discomfort. This isn't necessary, Michael. I wanted to, he said simply. Also, I brought breakfast. He held up a white bakery box. Chocolate croissants and blueberry muffins. Chocolate for breakfast, Zara gasped, appearing fully in the doorway now. Just this once, Eleanor said, her resolve weakening at the girls' excitement. While Eleanor helped the twins get dressed, Michael set the table, finding plates and cups in the kitchen cabinets. He also prepared coffee for the adults and milk for the girls. When they returned, Zara climbed onto a chair and peered into her cup. The milk has bubbles. I made it warm and added a little cinnamon, Michael explained. My mother used to make it for me when I was your age. Where is your mommy now? Zoe asked, taking a big bite of chocolate croissant. She died when I was in college, Michael said. She worked very hard to take care of me by herself. Like Grandma takes care of us, Zara observed. Yes, very much like that. Eleanor sat down at the table, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug. You mentioned your mother raised you alone? Michael nodded. She worked 3 jobs sometimes. She was determined I would go to college, which I did on scholarship. And then you started your company? Eleanor asked. In my dorm room, Michael confirmed. With a friend who's still my business partner today. Zoe, who had been listening carefully, put down her muffin. If you're our dad, why weren't you with us and Mommy? Why didn't you help? The directness of her question silenced the table. Eleanor looked like she might intervene, but Michael shook his head slightly. Zoe, that's a fair question, he said seriously. The truth is I didn't know about you and Zara. Your mom and I only knew each other for a short time before I got very busy with my company. We stopped talking to each other and she never told me she was going to have babies. Why not? Zoe pressed. Michael glanced at Eleanor, who looked uncomfortable but remained silent. I think, Michael said carefully, your mom wanted to do things her own way. She was very independent and strong. She might have thought I was too focused on my work to be a good father. Were you? Zoe challenged. Michael considered his answer. Back then, maybe. My work was everything to me. But people can change, Zoe. Finding out about you two has changed me already. The serious conversation was interrupted when Michael remembered the science kits. He retrieved them from one of the bags. I brought something for you both, he said, presenting a kit to each twin. Zoe's eyes widened at the crystal-growing laboratory box. Zara received the Paint Your Own Solar System kit. Can we open them now? Zara asked, looking to Eleanor for permission. After breakfast, Eleanor said, and after you both say thank you. Thank you, the twins chorused. As they finished eating, Michael turned to Eleanor. It's a beautiful day. I thought maybe we could all go to Central Park. Eleanor studied him for a moment. I suppose that would be all right. Girls, would you like that? The enthusiastic response made the decision final. Within the hour, they were on their way in Michael's car. The twins were dressed in matching blue shorts and white t-shirts, though Zoe had insisted on wearing red sneakers while Zara chose purple ones. At Central Park, they walked along the paths near the pond. Zoe ran ahead, pointing out ducks and asking questions about everything she saw. Zara stayed closer to the adults, observing quietly and occasionally stopping to examine interesting rocks or leaves. They're so different, Michael remarked to Eleanor. They always have been, Eleanor agreed, even as babies. Zoe was born screaming at the world. Zara just blinked and looked around curiously. When they reached the rocky area near the pond, Zoe scrambled up the boulders with confidence. Zara followed more cautiously. Be careful, girls, Eleanor called. Zara reached for a handhold that was just beyond her reach. Her foot slipped on the smooth stone, and she began to fall backward. Before Eleanor could even gasp, Michael moved with surprising speed, catching Zara safely in his arms. Gotcha, he said, heart pounding as he set her gently on stable ground. Zara looked up at him with wide eyes. You're fast. I used to run track in school, Michael explained, still feeling the rush of protective instinct that had propelled him forward. Eleanor had one hand pressed to her heart. Thank you, she said quietly. They continued their walk to a nearby cafe where they stopped for refreshments. As they settled at an outdoor table, Michael broached the subject he'd been considering all morning. Eleanor, I'd like to talk about how I can support the girls going forward, he began. I want to set up a trust for their education and future needs. And I'm looking at purchasing a home in this neighborhood so I can be close without disrupting their routine. Eleanor's expression was guarded. That's a significant commitment. They're my daughters, Michael said simply. I've missed 5 years already. I don't want to miss any more. As they talked, Zoe became restless and began fidgeting with her hot chocolate. The cup tipped suddenly, spilling across the table. Zoe flinched visibly, her body tensing as if expecting anger or punishment. Michael immediately grabbed napkins. No problem at all, he said cheerfully. Did you know I once spilled an entire pitcher of water on my company's first investor? The twins stared at him. What happened? Zara asked. He said it cooled him off because it was a hot day. Michael grinned, continuing to mop up the spill. Then he gave us twice the money we asked for. The girls giggled, and Zoe's tense posture relaxed. Michael caught Eleanor watching him, her expression softening. Later, as they walked back to the car, the twins ran ahead again, examining a colorful butterfly that had landed on a flower. You handled that well, Eleanor said quietly. The spill. After yesterday's incident, they're both sensitive about making messes. No child should be afraid of accidents, Michael said, or of making mistakes. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. Michael, I've been thinking about your offer. If you're serious about staying in their lives consistently, then yes, we can work out an arrangement, but there need to be clear boundaries and agreements. Of course, Michael agreed immediately. They need stability, regular schedules, consistent rules between homes, and they stay enrolled in their current school with their friends. Absolutely, Michael said. I'll follow your lead on all of it. You know them best. As they reached the car, Zara tugged on Michael's hand. Can we do the science kits when we get home? The simple question, and the casual touch of her small hand in his, filled Michael with unexpected emotion. Yes, he managed to say, I'd like that very much. The following morning, Michael sat at his desk in the Reynolds Technologies headquarters, staring at the multiple screens on his wall. Each displayed a different news channel, and all were showing the same story: grainy smartphone footage of his confrontation with Susan Blackwell at the airport lounge. Tech billionaire defends children from airline cruelty, read one headline. Another proclaimed, Reynolds to airline supervisor, that's my daughter. Sarah, his personal assistant, rushed into the office. Her normally calm demeanor was replaced with obvious anxiety. Michael, your PR team is waiting in the main conference room. The airline CEO has called 4 times this morning, and 3 news vans are parked outside the building. Michael rubbed his forehead. How did this leak? Someone in the lounge recorded it on their phone. It went viral overnight, Sarah explained, handing him a tablet. Over 2 million views already. The video showed the moment Michael had confronted Susan, though thankfully it didn't capture his private conversation with the twins. The recording ended with his phone call to Jim Brennan, where he'd referred to Zoe and Zara as his daughters. Sir, this is a PR crisis, but also an opportunity, Sarah continued. People are calling you a hero for standing up to corporate bullying. Michael's phone rang again. The screen displayed Jim Brennan's name. I need to take this, he said to Sarah. Tell the PR team I'll join them in 15 minutes. Sarah nodded and left as Michael answered the call. Jim, he said simply. Mike, this is a complete disaster, the airline CEO began immediately. That video doesn't show the full context. Blackwell was having a personal crisis. Her mother had just been hospitalized that morning. We can issue a joint statement explaining the misunderstanding and… Stop, Michael interrupted firmly. There was no misunderstanding, Jim. I was there. Your supervisor threatened 5-year-old children. My children. A pause followed. So it's true? Those are your daughters? The media is speculating wildly. Yes, they're mine, Michael confirmed. I recently discovered this through a DNA test, but that's not the point. What happened in your lounge was inexcusable, regardless of who those children belonged to. Of course, Jim backpedaled, and we've already suspended Susan pending investigation. But Mike, we need to manage this story together. Your company provides our entire booking system. The media is connecting those dots. Good, Michael said, because I'm about to make those connections very clear in my statement this afternoon. What statement? Jim asked, alarm evident in his voice. The one explaining that Reynolds Technologies expects all its partners to maintain basic human decency toward children. The one where I announce that our continued relationship depends on your airline implementing comprehensive anti-discrimination training. Mike, be reasonable, Jim pleaded. This was one isolated incident. Was it? Michael challenged. Carol Bennett seemed pretty afraid to stand up to Susan. That suggests a culture problem, not an individual one. Before Jim could respond, Michael's other phone rang. It was Eleanor. I need to take this call, Jim. My PR team will contact yours in the next hour with my terms. He switched calls without waiting for a response. Eleanor? Everything okay? There are reporters outside our apartment building, Eleanor said, her voice tense. The girls' school just called. Apparently news vans are there too. Michael stood up immediately. I'll send security right away. Don't talk to anyone. Where are the girls now? Still at school. I was about to pick them up, but I'm afraid of bringing them through that crowd. I'll handle it, Michael assured her. I'll have my security team bring you all to my office. It's more secure here. Michael, what's happening? Eleanor asked. One of the mothers from school called and said Zoe and Zara are on television. The airport incident went viral, Michael explained. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. I didn't expect this. After finishing the call, Michael buzzed for Sarah. Send the security team to this address immediately, he instructed, writing down Eleanor's information. Then have them go to this elementary school. I need my driver to bring Eleanor Wilson and her granddaughters, my daughters, here as quickly and discreetly as possible. Yes, sir, Sarah said, eyes widening slightly at the confirmation of the rumors. In the conference room, 6 people from Michael's PR team waited anxiously. They stood as he entered. The statement we prepared focuses on privacy for your family while highlighting your protective instincts, began Melissa, his head of communications. We avoid confirming paternity but express your concern for all children in similar situations. Change it, Michael said. I'm confirming paternity. Zoe and Zara Wilson are my daughters. I recently discovered this through a DNA test and have been working to establish a relationship with them and their grandmother, who has raised them since their mother's death. The team exchanged glances. Michael, Melissa said carefully, that's a major personal revelation to make under pressure. Are you sure? I'm sure, Michael interrupted. I'm not hiding them or treating them like some secret. They deserve better. For the next hour, they crafted a statement that balanced privacy concerns with Michael's desire to acknowledge his daughters publicly. Meanwhile, his legal team joined via video conference to discuss the airline situation. We have significant leverage here, noted Richard, his chief counsel. Their contract renewal is up in 3 months, and the booking system integration would cost them millions to replace. I don't want to threaten them, Michael clarified. I want them to make real changes. Sensitivity training for all customer-facing staff, new protocols for handling situations involving children, and a substantial donation to anti-bullying programs. At 11:30, security arrived with Eleanor and the twins. Michael met them in his private office area, away from the conference rooms. Are you all right? He asked Eleanor, who looked shaken. There were so many people with cameras, she said. I don't understand why anyone cares about us. Because of me, Michael said regretfully. I'm sorry you're caught in this. Zoe tugged at Michael's sleeve. Tommy from my class said we're famous now. He saw us on his mom's phone. Some people are interested in what happened at the airport, Michael explained, crouching down to their level. But that doesn't mean we have to talk to them. The mean lady is on TV too, Zara added quietly. She looks sad now. Michael nodded. Actions have consequences, Zara. Eleanor sat down on Michael's office couch, looking around at the sleek modern space with its floor-to-ceiling windows and city views. What happens now? She asked. You can stay here until the media interest dies down, Michael suggested. I have a private apartment connected to the office for late work nights. It's small but comfortable. We can't hide forever, Eleanor pointed out. No, but after my statement this afternoon, they'll have their story. It should calm down. Sarah knocked and entered. Michael, Jim Brennan from the airline is here in person. He's quite insistent on seeing you. Michael frowned. Show him to conference room 2. I'll be there shortly. He turned to Eleanor. Will you be okay here for a few minutes? We'll be fine, Eleanor assured him. Go handle your business. In the conference room, Jim Brennan paced nervously. The airline's CEO was a tall man with silver hair and an expensive suit that couldn't hide his anxiety. Mike, he said as Michael entered, this has gotten completely out of hand. The video is on every news channel. Our stock is down 7% this morning. Mine is up 2%, Michael noted. Apparently, standing up to bullies is good for business. This isn't funny, Jim snapped. Susan Blackwell has worked for us for 15 years. Yes, she made a serious mistake, but her entire career is ruined. She threatened children, Jim. My children. Jim sighed heavily. I know, and it was inexcusable. That's why I'm here in person. We want to make this right. I'm listening, Michael said, taking a seat at the conference table. We're terminating Susan, effective immediately. We're implementing a comprehensive sensitivity training program for all staff, and we're establishing new protocols for situations involving minors. That's a start, Michael acknowledged. But what about the broader culture that made Carol Bennett afraid to intervene? That made other passengers sit silently while a child was humiliated? Jim looked uncomfortable. We're prepared to make a substantial donation to the charity of your choice. Create your own foundation, Michael suggested. Focus on improving customer service for vulnerable populations, and make Carol Bennett the head of it. She tried to help when others wouldn't. The discussion continued for another 30 minutes as they worked out the details of a settlement that would satisfy both sides. When it was finalized, Jim left looking relieved and Michael returned to his private office. He found the twins drawing at his conference table while Eleanor looked through a photo album she'd found on his bookshelf. Your mother? She asked, pointing to a picture of a smiling black woman with Michael's eyes. Michael nodded. She worked as a housekeeper at 3 different hotels. Put herself through nursing school while raising me. She would be proud, Eleanor said simply. Before Michael could respond, his office door burst open. A man with a camera pushed past Sarah, who was trying to block him. Mr. Reynolds, can you confirm these are your secret children? How long have you known about them? The twins looked up in alarm. Zara shrank back in her chair while Zoe moved protectively in front of her. Michael stepped between the reporter and his family. Get out. Now. The public has a right to know, the reporter began. These children have a right to privacy. Michael cut him off, signaling to security who had appeared in the doorway. Remove him. And check how he got past the lobby. As security escorted the intruder out, Michael turned to the twins. I'm sorry about that. Sometimes people forget their manners when they're trying to get a story. Like the mean lady at the airport? Zara asked. Yes, exactly like that. Michael agreed. Eleanor placed a protective hand on each girl's shoulder. Perhaps we should go home. Go. Find somewhere quieter to stay for a few days. Michael looked at his family. The grandmother who had raised his daughters with love and care, and the 2 small girls who shared his eyes and smile. In that moment, he understood that his wealth and fame had brought a new challenge to their lives, one he needed to address. I have a better idea, he said. I've been looking at properties in your neighborhood, Michael explained. A brownstone just 2 blocks from your apartment is available. I could buy it immediately. It would give us all more space and privacy while this media situation calms down. 3 weeks later, moving trucks lined the quiet Brooklyn street in front of a handsome brick brownstone. Workers carried furniture and boxes through the front door while Michael stood on the sidewalk, checking items off a list. He looked up as a familiar voice called his name. Michael, we're here! Zara waved excitedly as she and Zoe approached with Eleanor. Right on time. Michael smiled. The media frenzy had finally died down after his official statement and the airline's public apology. Life was beginning to find a new rhythm. Zoe studied the building with her hands on her hips. Is this really your house now? It is, Michael confirmed. Would you like to see inside? I have a surprise for you both. The twins rushed up the steps, their excitement evident. Eleanor followed more slowly. You didn't have to do all this, she said quietly. Moving into the neighborhood, buying a whole house. I wanted to be close, Michael replied simply, without disrupting their routines. Inside, the brownstone had been transformed from an empty shell to a warm home in just 3 weeks. The first floor held a living room with comfortable furniture, a dining area, and a modern kitchen. Large windows let in plenty of natural light. It's very nice, Eleanor acknowledged, looking around with appreciation. "Can we see the whole house?" Zoe asked, already heading toward the stairs. Michael followed. "Of course. Your surprise is on the second floor." The second floor had a master bedroom, a guest room, a home office, and one special room at the end of the hall. Michael stopped at this closed door. "This room is for when you stay over," he explained. "Ready to see it?" The twins nodded eagerly. Michael opened the door to reveal a carefully designed children's room with 2 beds, each decorated to match the girls' distinct personalities. Zoe's side had blue bedding with star patterns and a small telescope by the window. On the wall hung framed illustrations of different rock and mineral specimens. Zara's side featured purple bedding with butterfly designs. An easel stood in the corner with high-quality art supplies arranged neatly beside it. A reading nook with cushions held picture books and art books suitable for her age. The twins stood in the doorway, momentarily speechless. "Do you like it?" Michael asked, suddenly nervous. "If you don't, we can change anything." "Is the telescope real?" Zoe asked, approaching it cautiously. "Yes, it actually works. I can show you how to look at the moon tonight." Zara had moved to the easel, gently touching the new paintbrushes. "These are just for me?" "Just for you," Michael confirmed. "I noticed how much you like to draw." Eleanor watched from the doorway, her expression soft. "You paid attention to what they like." "I've been taking notes," Michael admitted. "Every time they mention something they enjoy." The twins explored every corner of their new room, exclaiming over each discovery. When Zoe found a collection of geology specimens in a display case, her eyes widened. "Real rocks! Look, Zara, this one sparkles." While the twins investigated their treasures, Eleanor turned to Michael. "They'll still live primarily with me," she reminded him gently. "Of course," Michael agreed, "but they can stay here whenever you're all comfortable with it. Weekends, maybe. Or if you need a break." Zara had wandered out of the room and was exploring the hallway. "What's in here?" she called, pushing open the door to Michael's office. Michael joined her. "This is where I'll work sometimes instead of going to my main office." Zara had already spotted the photographs on his desk. She picked up one showing a young black woman with a bright smile. "Who's this?" "That's my mother," Michael said, taking the frame gently. "Her name was Rose." "Where is she now?" Michael sat in his office chair, bringing himself to Zara's level. "She died when I was in college. She got sick, like your mom did." Zara's face grew solemn. "Do you miss her?" "Every day," Michael said honestly. "I miss my mommy too," Zara whispered. "Sometimes I can't remember what her voice sounded like, and that makes me sad." Michael felt his throat tighten. "I understand. I started to forget my mom's voice, too, so I recorded myself talking about all my memories of her. It helped." "Could I do that about Mommy?" Zara asked. "Of course. We could record you and Zoe talking about her anytime you want." Zoe had joined them now, examining another photo on Michael's desk. "Is this you when you were little?" "Yes, I was about 8 in that picture." "You were skinny," Zoe observed. Michael smiled. "We didn't have much money. My mom worked very hard to take care of me." "Like Grandma does for us," Zara said. "Exactly like that." Eleanor appeared in the doorway. "Girls, why don't you go back to your room and decide which toys from home you want to bring here? I need to talk to Michael for a few minutes." Once the twins had left, Eleanor took a seat across from Michael. "We need to discuss some practical matters, schedules, rules, expectations." "I'm listening," Michael said, giving her his full attention. "Their primary residence remains with me," Eleanor began. "Their school, friends, and regular activities stay the same. We need consistent rules between both homes about bedtimes, screen time, and behavior." "Agreed," Michael said immediately. "I'll follow whatever routines you've established." They usually go to bed at 8 o'clock. They can watch television for 1 hour per day. No sugary cereals except on weekends. and they're responsible for keeping their toys picked up. Michael nodded, making mental notes. What about their schedules? When might they stay here? Eleanor considered this. Perhaps Friday nights to start. Then we can add Saturday nights if that goes well. They need time to adjust. Of course, and what about you, Eleanor? What support do you need? Eleanor seemed surprised by the question. Me? Yes. You've been carrying all this responsibility alone. How can I help make things easier for you? Eleanor was quiet for a moment. It's been difficult since Jasmine died. Not just financially, but I'm older now. I don't have the energy I had when I raised her. Would regular breaks help? Times when the girls stay here, giving you space for yourself? That would be very welcome, Eleanor admitted. I haven't had a full night to myself in years. Their conversation was interrupted by Michael's phone ringing. He checked the screen. I'm sorry, I should take this. It's Carol Bennett from the airline. Eleanor nodded, understanding as Michael answered. Carol, hello. How are you? Mr. Reynolds, Carol's voice sounded nervous. I've been asked to testify at Susan Blackwell's disciplinary hearing next week. I've never done anything like that before. You're just sharing what you saw, Michael reassured her. Tell the truth about how Susan spoke to the girls. I'm afraid, Carol admitted. Some of the other staff are upset about her termination. They say I should have stayed quiet. Carol, speaking up when something is wrong takes courage. That's how systems change. I'm proud of you for doing it. Thank you, Carol said, sounding a little stronger. Will you be there too? Yes, Eleanor and I will both testify. We'll see you then. After ending the call, Michael explained the situation to Eleanor. Susan Blackwell's formal hearing is next Thursday. They've asked us to testify about what happened. What about the girls? Should they attend? Eleanor asked. Absolutely not, Michael said firmly. They've been through enough. We can represent their experience. From downstairs came the sound of the doorbell. Michael checked his watch. That should be dinner. I ordered from that Italian restaurant you mentioned the girls like. As they headed downstairs, Zoe and Zara raced past them, giggling. Walk, don't run, Eleanor called automatically. The delivery person handed over several bags of food, which Michael carried to the dining room. The twins helped set the table, placing napkins and silverware with varying degrees of precision. This feels like a restaurant, Zara observed as she climbed into her chair. A family restaurant, Michael corrected gently, serving pasta onto her plate. As they ate their first meal in Michael's new home, the conversation flowed more easily than ever before. Zoe described a science project at school. Zara talked about a drawing she was working on. Eleanor shared stories about teaching the girls to bake cookies. Michael mostly listened, savoring this simple family dinner that meant more to him than any business achievement. When the meal was finished and they prepared to leave, Zara tugged at Michael's hand. When can we come back? How about Friday? Michael suggested, looking to Eleanor for approval. You could stay overnight and we could use the telescope to look at the stars. Can we, Grandma? Zoe asked eagerly. Eleanor nodded. I think that would be nice. At the door, Zoe surprised everyone by giving Michael a quick hug before running down the steps. Zara followed with a more careful hug and whispered, Thank you for my paintbrushes. As Eleanor led the twins back toward their apartment, Michael stood on the steps of his new brownstone. For the first time in years, his house felt like a home, even as it emptied for the evening. The knowledge that they would return filled the rooms with promise instead of silence. Inside, he walked through each room, imagining Friday night when small voices would bring these spaces to life. In the kitchen, he made a list of child-friendly foods to stock. In their bedroom, he adjusted the telescope to be ready for stargazing. The disciplinary hearing for Susan Blackwell loomed on the horizon, a necessary conclusion to the airport incident that had changed all their lives. But tonight, Michael focused only on preparing a home where his daughters could begin to know him, not as the billionaire from the news, but simply as their father. The day of Susan Blackwell's disciplinary hearing arrived with gray skies and light rain. Michael stood in his kitchen, checking his watch as he waited for his driver to text that he had picked up Eleanor. He had wanted the twins to stay with a trusted babysitter, believing they shouldn't have to relive the airport incident through this formal process. His phone buzzed with a message. "Mrs. Wilson is in the car. Heading to your location now." 15 minutes later, Eleanor walked up the steps to his brownstone. She wore a simple navy dress and carried a small umbrella. "Good morning," Michael greeted her. "Are the girls settled with Mrs. Parker?" "Yes, she brought puzzles and books to keep them busy," Eleanor replied. "Zoe asked why we both had to go to a meeting about the mean lady." "She's very perceptive." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That sometimes when adults behave badly, other adults need to talk about what happened to make sure it doesn't happen again." Michael nodded approvingly. "Are you ready for this? It might be uncomfortable." "I've been rehearsing what to say," Eleanor admitted. "I want them to understand how their employees' behavior affected the girls." The drive to the airline's corporate headquarters took nearly an hour through morning traffic. The modern glass building rose 20 stories above the surrounding structures, with the company logo prominently displayed near the top. In the lobby, a representative met them. "Mr. Reynolds, Mrs. Wilson, thank you for coming. The hearing is on the 15th floor in our main conference center." They followed her to an elevator that carried them upward in smooth silence. When the doors opened, they saw Carol Bennett waiting nervously in the hallway, dressed in her flight attendant uniform. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, clearly relieved to see a friendly face. "Mrs. Wilson, thank you for coming." "Thank you for testifying," Michael replied. "I know this isn't easy." Carol nodded. "They've interviewed me twice already." Susan's union representative asked such aggressive questions. "Made me feel like I was the one who did something wrong." "You didn't," Eleanor assured her. "You tried to help when no one else would." The representative guided them to a large conference room. A long table faced a panel of 5 people, 3 men and 2 women in business attire. On one side of the room sat Susan Blackwell with an older man who must be her union representative. Susan looked pale and tense in a conservative gray suit. "The airline disciplinary panel will now come to order," announced the woman in the center. "I'm Diane Foster, head of human resources. Today we're reviewing the conduct of Susan Blackwell, customer service supervisor, regarding the incident at JFK International Airport on May 10th. Michael and Eleanor were directed to seats opposite Susan. Carol took a seat behind them, still looking nervous. "We'll begin by reviewing the evidence," Diane continued. "This includes eyewitness statements and video footage that has now been viewed by millions of people online." A screen descended from the ceiling, and the now familiar footage began to play. Michael watched Susan's face as she saw herself on screen, berating Zara for spilling juice and making the cruel comment about cleaning it with her tongue. Susan stared at the table, unable to watch. When the video ended, Diane turned to Susan. "Ms. Blackwell, do you wish to make a statement before we hear from witnesses?" Susan's union representative leaned toward her and whispered something. She nodded and stood. "I want to acknowledge that my behavior was inappropriate," she began stiffly. "I was having a difficult personal day. My mother had been hospitalized that morning and I was upset and stressed. I should have taken the day off, but we were short-staffed." She paused. "I've never behaved that way before in 15 years of service with this airline." "Thank you, Ms. Blackwell," Diane said. "We'll now hear from our first witness, Carol Bennett." Carol moved to the witness chair, visibly trembling. She described what she had seen that day, how Susan had immediately overreacted to the spilled juice, how the girls had been frightened, how the other passengers had seemed too uncomfortable to intervene. Susan's representative interrupted repeatedly. "Isn't it true that the lounge was particularly busy that day? Wasn't Ms. Blackwell dealing with multiple customer issues simultaneously?" "No, sir," Carol replied firmly. "The lounge was half empty. There were no other issues requiring attention." When the representative suggested that Carol was exaggerating to advance her own career, Michael noticed her shoulders stiffen. "I'm testifying because what I saw was wrong," Carol stated clearly. "Those little girls were terrified. No child should be treated that way, especially by someone representing our company." Next, it was Michael's turn to testify. He described arriving at the airport and observing the twins, then witnessing Susan's disproportionate reaction to the spilled juice. "As a father," he said, looking directly at the panel, "I was disturbed not just by the words, but by the intent behind them. Ms. Blackwell deliberately tried to humiliate children for being children. The psychological impact of such treatment can last long beyond the moment itself." "You only recently discovered you were these children's father," noted one of the male panel members. "Some might suggest your dramatic intervention was more about publicity than genuine concern." Michael met his gaze steadily. "I intervened because what I witnessed was wrong. I would have done the same for any child in that situation. The fact that DNA testing later confirmed they were my daughters doesn't change the fundamental issue. A customer service professional threatened and humiliated young children in a premium lounge they had every right to be in." Eleanor's testimony followed. She spoke quietly but with clear emotion about the aftermath of the incident. "Zara has had nightmares," she explained. "She wakes up crying, afraid of making messes. She apologizes constantly now, even for the smallest accidents. Zoe has become even more protective of her sister. When we eat at restaurants, she carefully moves drinks away from the edge of the table." Eleanor paused. "Children should feel safe in public spaces. My granddaughters no longer do." The panel asked several questions about the girls' behavior before and after the incident. Eleanor's answers were thoughtful and specific, painting a clear picture of the emotional impact on the twins. During a brief recess, Susan approached Michael and Eleanor in the hallway. Her union representative hovered nearby. "Mr. Reynolds, Mrs. Wilson," Susan began, her voice formal. "I wanted to personally express my regret for the incident. My behavior was unprofessional and I'm truly sorry for any distress caused to your daughters." Michael studied her face. The apology sounded rehearsed, more concerned with saving her job than acknowledging real harm. "Apologies aren't just about being forgiven, Ms. Blackwell," he replied. "They're about recognizing harm and committing to change. Do you actually understand what you did wrong?" Susan blinked, clearly surprised by his response. "I spoke inappropriately to children. It won't happen again." "It's not just about what you said," Eleanor added quietly. "It's about the message you sent those girls about their value and belonging. Words have power, especially when directed at children." Susan seemed genuinely confused. "They're 5 years old. They'll forget all about it in a week." Michael shook his head. "That shows you still don't understand. Children don't simply forget being humiliated. They internalize it. They believe it's something about them that deserved that treatment." Before Susan could respond, they were called back into the conference room. The panel had reached their decision. After reviewing all evidence and testimony, this panel finds that Susan Blackwell violated multiple company policies regarding customer service standards and appropriate conduct, Diane announced. The recommended action is immediate termination of employment, with mandatory counseling before consideration for any future positions in customer service industries. Susan gasped audibly. Her representative immediately began protesting, but Diane continued. Additionally, the airline will implement a new comprehensive training program for all customer-facing employees with specific emphasis on interactions with children and vulnerable populations. This program will be named the JFK Protocol, in reference to this incident. After the hearing concluded, Jim Brennan, the airline CEO, approached Michael and Eleanor in the lobby. "Thank you both for testifying today," he said. "I want you to know we're taking this very seriously." Carol Bennett has been offered a promotion to head our new customer service training initiative. "That's appropriate recognition for her integrity," Michael acknowledged. We'd also like to make a substantial donation to a charity supporting children's welfare, Jim added. Perhaps you could recommend one? Michael glanced at Eleanor before responding. Actually, I have a better idea, but we can discuss that another time. As they left the building, Carol caught up with them. Thank you, she said simply, for speaking up that day and for supporting me today. You're the one who deserves thanks, Eleanor told her. Your testimony was brave and honest. In the car returning to Brooklyn, Eleanor stared out the window at the passing city. After several minutes of silence, she turned to Michael. Today wasn't just about punishing Susan, she observed. It was about changing a system that allowed her behavior in the first place. Michael nodded, and it was the first time we truly acted as parents together, protecting the girls even when they weren't physically present. Eleanor smiled slightly. Yes, I suppose it was. As the car continued toward Brooklyn, both were thinking about the twins waiting at home and how to build a better world for them, one difficult conversation at a time. 2 months passed quickly. The twins now spent every Friday night and most Saturdays at Michael's brownstone, with an occasional Sunday added when Eleanor needed extra time to rest. A family rhythm had developed, one that none of them could have imagined before the airport incident. On a bright Saturday morning in July, Michael stood in a newly renovated community center in Brooklyn, checking last-minute details. Colorful balloons floated against the ceiling. A large banner proclaimed, "Happy 6th birthday, Zoe and Zara," in rainbow letters. Is the cake in the refrigerator? Michael asked Sarah, his assistant, who had volunteered to help with the party preparations. Yes, and I confirmed the ice cream delivery for 11:30, Sarah replied. The face painter will arrive at 11 and the magician at 1. Michael nodded, surveying the space with nervous attention. Today was important, the twins' first birthday with him in their lives. He wanted everything to be perfect. The sound of a door opening made him turn. Eleanor entered carrying a box of decorations. The girls are getting dressed, she announced. They're so excited they could barely eat breakfast. Do you think they'll like it? Michael gestured around the room. Is it too much? Eleanor smiled at his nervousness. It's wonderful, Michael. And the community center renovation is even more wonderful. A small bronze plaque near the entrance now read, Wilson Community Arts Center, with Jasmine's name and dates beneath. Michael had purchased and renovated the struggling community center as a surprise for Eleanor and the girls. The art classroom is fully stocked, Michael said. The science lab too. The community kids can use it after school for free. Jasmine would have loved this, Eleanor said softly. She was always trying to find affordable art classes for the twins. The doors burst open again as Zoe and Zara rushed in, wearing matching purple dresses but with different colored shoes and hair accessories. Zoe in green, Zara in blue. Their faces lit up as they saw the decorated space. "Daddy!" Zara called out, running to Michael. The word still felt new and precious each time he heard it. "Are those all our balloons?" "All for you and your sister," Michael confirmed, bending down for a hug. Zoe approached more calmly, surveying the decorations with a critical eye. "It looks nice. Did you remember the chocolate cake?" "Half chocolate, half vanilla, just like you asked," Michael assured her, with purple frosting. Eleanor watched this interaction with a small smile. The girls had begun calling Michael Daddy just 2 weeks ago, after many discussions about what felt comfortable. The first time had been spontaneous. Zara had fallen and scraped her knee during a park outing, and the word had slipped out naturally as Michael had comforted her. "When will my friends come?" Zoe asked, checking the large clock on the wall. "In about an hour," Eleanor replied. "That gives us time to finish setting up." The next hour passed in a flurry of activity. More decorations appeared, games were arranged, and a table for presents was positioned near the window. At exactly 11 o'clock, the first guests arrived, a family with twin boys from the girls' kindergarten class. "Welcome to the Wilson Community Arts Center," Zoe greeted them importantly. "I'm 6 years old today." More families arrived until the room was filled with excited children and curious parents. Michael noticed many of the adults glancing at him with interest. Some whispered to each other when they thought he wasn't looking. "That's Zoe and Zara's dad," one mother explained to another. "You know, the tech billionaire from the news, the airport incident?" Michael pretended not to hear, focusing instead on making sure each child received a welcome bag with small toys and art supplies. A young girl with braids approached him shyly. "Are you really Zoe's dad? She said you found them when you were at the airport." Before Michael could answer, Zoe appeared at his side. "This is my dad who found us," she announced proudly to her friend. "He didn't know about us before because our mommy didn't tell him. But now he lives near us and I have 2 houses." The simple explanation, delivered with such confidence, made Michael smile. He had worried about how the girls would explain their unusual family situation to friends, but Zoe had distilled it to its essence. As the party progressed, Michael observed how easily the twins moved between their 2 worlds. Their school friends played alongside the children of Michael's colleagues, who had brought their families as well. Eleanor chatted comfortably with both groups of parents. The face painter transformed children into tigers, butterflies, and superheroes. The magician performed tricks that made the room erupt with laughter. Through it all, Michael took photos, capturing moments he had missed for the first 5 birthdays of his daughters' lives. When it was time for cake, everyone gathered around a large table. Eleanor led everyone in singing "Happy Birthday," followed by a special birthday song she explained was a Wilson family tradition. "Blow out the candles together," Michael encouraged as the songs ended. The twins leaned forward simultaneously, their cheeks puffed with effort as they extinguished all 6 candles on each side of the cake. The room erupted in applause. After cake and ice cream, it was time for presents. The twins received books, toys, and art supplies from their friends. Michael and Eleanor had coordinated their gifts. She gave them each special jewelry boxes that had belonged to Jasmine, while Michael waited to present his gift last. "This is something special," he explained, handing them a carefully wrapped package. The twins tore off the paper together to reveal a digital photo frame. As they watched, images began to appear on the screen, photos of Jasmine that they recognized, but also many they had never seen before. "Where did these come from?" Eleanor asked, her voice catching as she saw a young Jasmine laughing at the camera. "I found her old laptop in your storage closet when we were looking for the twins' baby photos," Michael explained. "The hard drive was damaged, but my tech team was able to recover most of the files, including these photos." The twins stared at the screen, mesmerized as images of their mother appeared and changed every few seconds. There were photos of Jasmine pregnant, her hands resting on her rounded belly, photos of baby Zoe and Zara that had been lost when Jasmine's phone broke years ago. "That's Mommy," Zara whispered, touching the screen gently. Eleanor wiped tears from her eyes. "I thought these were gone forever." "Thank you, Michael." As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Michael's nervousness about meeting the other parents had disappeared. Several fathers had engaged him in conversation about the community center programs, while mothers had thanked him for the thoughtful gift bags. Later, as the cleanup crew Michael had hired took care of the space, the family sat on a bench outside the community center. The twins wore paper crowns from the party, slightly crooked on their heads. "Did you have a good birthday?" Michael asked. "The best birthday," Zara confirmed, still holding the digital frame carefully in her lap. Zoe, always the more thoughtful one, looked up at Michael with serious eyes. "Daddy, why did you help us that day at the airport?" "You didn't know we were your kids then." The question took Michael by surprise. He considered his answer carefully, aware that Eleanor was listening too. "I helped because what was happening was wrong," he said simply. "No one should be treated the way that lady was treating you, especially children. But then, when I got closer, I saw something in your faces that looked familiar." "Our eyes," Zara suggested. "They look like yours." "Yes," Michael smiled. "But it was more than that." Something inside me just knew I needed to protect you. And now I know why. Because sometimes standing up for what's right leads you to exactly where you belong," Eleanor added softly. Michael looked at her gratefully. Exactly that. Zoe seemed satisfied with this answer. She leaned against Michael's side, a rare gesture of affection from the more reserved twin. "I'm glad you found us." As the summer evening settled around them, the small family remained on the bench outside the Wilson Community Arts Center. The birthday celebration had been more than just a party. It was a milestone in their journey together, a blending of past and present, a foundation for their future. In Michael's pocket was the receipt for next week's delivery, a second digital frame for his own home filled with the same recovered photos of Jasmine. He would place it next to the picture of his mother, honoring both women who had shaped the family he now cherished above all else. 6 months later, Michael stood on a large stage in Washington, D.C. Bright lights shined down as he looked out at hundreds of people filling the seats of the National Conference on Corporate Responsibility. His presentation slides showed not the latest technology from Reynolds Technologies, but something much more personal. "The Wilson Reynolds Foundation began with a spilled cup of juice," Michael said into the microphone. "What could have remained a private family moment became something much larger when it exposed a problem that affects many people: the abuse of power in public spaces." From his position on stage, Michael could see Eleanor sitting in the front row with Zoe and Zara. The twins wore matching blue dresses with different colored ribbons in their hair. At 6 years old, they sat remarkably still, watching their father with proud smiles. "6 months ago, I witnessed my daughters being mistreated by someone in a position of authority," Michael continued. "Like many of you might have done, I stepped in to protect them. What I didn't expect was how that moment would transform not just my family, but my understanding of corporate responsibility." The screen behind Michael changed to show the foundation's logo, a simple drawing of an adult and child holding hands, created from Zara's original sketch. The Wilson Reynolds Foundation supports individuals who experience discrimination in public spaces. We provide legal resources, counseling services, and education programs. But most importantly, we work with companies to create lasting change in their culture and training. Eleanor nodded encouragingly as Michael spoke. Their co-parenting relationship had evolved into a true partnership based on mutual respect. The twins divided their time between homes with a regular schedule that provided stability while allowing Eleanor much-needed personal time. "I'd like to share a video testimony from someone whose courage helped launch our first corporate partnership," Michael said, gesturing toward the screen. Carol Bennett appeared, looking confident in a business suit rather than her flight attendant uniform. "When I saw those little girls being mistreated, I wanted to help, but felt powerless in that moment," Carol said in the video. "Speaking up later was scary, but necessary. Today, I lead the airline's customer service initiative focusing on treating all passengers with dignity, especially children and vulnerable populations." The video continued with Carol explaining the training program she had developed, now being implemented at airports across the country. When the video ended, Michael returned to the microphone. Carol's story reminds us that speaking up matters, even when it's difficult. One person can truly change a system. After the presentation concluded, people surrounded Michael at the small reception that followed. Business leaders asked about implementing similar training at their companies. Journalists requested interviews about the foundation's work. Jim Brennan, the airline CEO, approached Michael with a handshake. "That was powerful, Mike. I need to thank you." "Thank me?" Michael raised his eyebrows. "That's unexpected." "The incident was painful for our company," Jim admitted, "but it transformed us. Our customer satisfaction scores have increased by 20% since implementing Carol's training program. Sometimes it takes a crisis to create meaningful change." "I appreciate your honesty," Michael said. "How is Susan Blackwell doing?" "She completed the counseling program. She's working in a different industry now, but she sent Carol a letter expressing genuine remorse. I think she finally understands the impact of her actions." Across the room, the twins were charming everyone they met. Zoe explained the foundation's work to a group of interested adults with surprising clarity. "Our dad helps people who get treated badly," she explained seriously. "Like when that lady was mean to us at the airport. Now he teaches other grown-ups not to be mean to kids." Zara, still the quieter twin, stood nearby, drawing in a small notebook. When a woman asked what she was creating, Zara carefully showed her the page. "It's for our book," she explained softly, "about standing up for people." Later, in the foundation's office near the conference center, Michael showed the twins the final printed copy of their children's book, titled Spilled Juice. It told the story of two young girls who learn about standing up against unfair treatment. The book would soon be distributed to elementary schools nationwide. "Look, that's your drawing," Michael pointed out to Zara, showing her the page where her artwork had been incorporated into the professional illustrations. "And that's my idea," Zoe added proudly, pointing to a character who looked remarkably like her standing up to an adult with a speech bubble saying, "That's not right." Eleanor examined the finished book with approval. "The children who read this will learn an important lesson in a gentle way." "That was the goal," Michael agreed, "to help other kids understand they deserve respect and to encourage adults to intervene when they see mistreatment." That evening, back in Brooklyn, the family gathered at Michael's brownstone. The space had evolved over the months, becoming truly lived in rather than just perfectly decorated. Children's artwork hung on the refrigerator. School schedules and family outings were marked on a large calendar in the kitchen. In the living room, photographs told the story of their blended family. Pictures of Jasmine held places of honor alongside photos of Michael's mother. Newer images showed the twins with both Michael and Eleanor at various outings and celebrations. Michael helped the twins with their science homework at the dining table while Eleanor prepared dinner in the kitchen. The routine felt natural now, as if they had always been a family. "Daddy, can you explain atoms again?" Zoe asked, frowning at her worksheet. "I don't understand how something so tiny makes up everything." "Of course," Michael said, pulling his chair closer. "Think about atoms as very tiny building blocks." From the kitchen, Eleanor watched this interaction with a smile. The man who had entered their lives so unexpectedly had become an essential part of it. The twins were thriving with his presence. Zoe's confidence had grown, and Zara's artistic talents were flourishing with the art tutors Michael had provided. When dinner was ready, they gathered around the table. The conversation flowed easily between school stories, foundation updates, and plans for the weekend. "Ms. Jensen said my science project was the best in class," Zoe announced proudly. "She asked if you helped me, Daddy, and I said yes, but I did all the hard parts myself." "You certainly did," Michael agreed. "I just answered questions." "Tommy got pushed on the playground yesterday," Zara said quietly. "I told the teacher." "Was that standing up for him?" "Absolutely," Eleanor assured her. "That was very brave." "Did the teacher help Tommy?" Michael asked. Zara nodded. "She talked to the boy who pushed him. He had to stay inside during recess." "That's how it should work," Michael said. "When we see something wrong, we tell someone who can help fix it." After dinner, while the twins got ready for bed, Michael and Eleanor sat in the living room with cups of tea. "The foundation is doing well," Eleanor observed. "I saw the grant applications you approved for those small businesses implementing new training programs." "We're making progress," Michael agreed. "Slower than I'd like, but real change takes time." "Like building a family," Eleanor said thoughtfully. 6 months ago, we were strangers trying to navigate an impossible situation. Now look at us." Michael glanced toward the hallway where the twins were brushing their teeth, chattering about the day's events. "I used to measure success by stock prices and product launches," he said quietly. "Now I measure it by Zara's smile when she shows me a new drawing, by Zoe's questions about how the world works, by moments like this." The twins returned in their pajamas, ready for their bedtime story. As they settled on the couch between Michael and Eleanor, Zoe picked up the family photo album they had been creating together. "Can we look at the pictures tonight instead of a story?" she asked. "Of course," Eleanor agreed. They turned through the pages slowly. Images of Jasmine holding the newborn twins, Eleanor teaching them to bake cookies, Michael showing them how to use the telescope. The newest photos showed all four of them at the community center smiling together. "This is my favorite," Zara said, pointing to a candid shot of Michael giving her a piggyback ride in Central Park. Michael felt a fullness in his chest as he looked at his daughter's finger touching the photo. From a simple DNA test to this moment, the journey had transformed everything he thought he knew about success, family, and purpose. As the twins grew sleepy, nestled between the two adults who loved them, Michael exchanged a glance with Eleanor over their heads. No words were needed to express their shared understanding. What had begun as a crisis in an airport lounge had become the foundation for something precious and lasting. Years later, when people would ask tech billionaire Michael Reynolds about his greatest innovation, he never mentioned the algorithms that made him famous or the companies he built. Instead, he would point to a family photo on his desk and smile. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.